We are live. I'm Brett Pike, and this is Classical Learner. Thank you so much for being here with me tonight, where we're going to learn just a little bit about the best methods in educating children. All right, I have the audio working, and all right, let's get right into it. So, last night I did my stream in which I really did a massive overview on my philosophy when it comes to the proper way to educate a child. And as part of that stream, at the end, I had mentioned the 14 lessons identified by John Taylor Gatto that are taught at elite private schools that the rest of us poor folk in the public school, are denied. So tonight we're going to go over the 14 lessons identified by Gatto. But before we do that, we should probably do an overview of who John Taylor Gatto was. So in 1988, 1989, 1990, maybe 91, but 3 of 4 years, John Taylor Gatto was the New York City Teacher of the Year. He taught in a poor inner city, the poor inner city in New York, and his students were doing better on standardized tests than the students at the elite private schools in New York. And in his final year, 1991, I think it was, he was the New York State Teacher of the Year. So it was the New York City and New York State. And that's when he abruptly resigned. He quit his job, and he took out a one-page ad in the New York Times. So this was, relatively big news. The reigning New York State Teacher of the Year resigns, and he took out a one-page op-ed, something along the lines of why I could no longer hurt, something along the lines of I could no longer hurt children, so I have to resign. And in that op-ed, he explained what he believed the education system to truly be, and that gets into some of what I covered. Actually, you know what? I posted a great meme from Gatto on Instagram today, so I'll just show it to you, which basically is what he said in his op-ed, that school teaches exactly what it's designed to teach, but it's not what people think. Let's slide this over. Get my face out of the way. So, according to Gatto, Liberty Snake Bear, how you doing? How's it doing, brother? What does school really teach children? And again, Gatto believed that school teaches children exactly what it's meant to teach, that truth comes from authority. Why does truth come from authority? Because children study from textbooks. Textbooks are authority, and if they repeat back what they're told, they get a good grade. If they don't, they get a poor grade. If the teacher tells them something is true, they repeat it back, and Lucy, what are you doing, girl? That's my dog. They repeat it back, and if they do, they get a good grade, and if they don't, they get a poor grade. 2, intelligence is the ability to remember and repeat. So, the example I gave last night was centered around the Civil War, but you can do it with anything. You can do it with the American Revolution, for example. Well, you could have students memorize information for 3 weeks for 1 month, give them multiple choice test at the end. They cram in as much memorization as possible. They take the test. And if they repeat that information back, great, you were able to remember a large quantity of information in a short period of time. You get an A, great job. And then what happens with children is a day later they forget everything they learned, which is why most people struggle when they watch the game show. Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? Accurate memory and repetition are rewarded. So it gets back to the same concept that children are being tasked with memorizing large quantities of information, but they're not engaging in critical thinking. Non-compliance is punished, that if you don't obey your authority down to um, even the little things, children in school can't speak without raising their hand. Children in school can't go to the bathroom. You can't take a piss without raising your hand and getting permission from authority. And if you think about the way school is structured, right? What do most people do throughout their lives? Most people, Lucy, you are very distracting back here. What are you doing? Get over here. Stay here for a second. So most people work a 9 to 5 job. So they work for 8 hours a day for 40 years for a corporation doing something they hate, for a boss they want to tell off, but they're afraid that if they do, well, they won't be able to pay off their mortgage and they'll find themselves in a bad situation. Well, if you think about the way school is structured, it's structured in the same exact way. Children are forced to go somewhere they don't want to be. If they don't do what they're told, there are repercussions. They go to school every morning, 8 in the morning, leave maybe not till 5, but they leave at 3 o'clock and they're expected to do homework. School, in almost every way, prepares children to be corporate worker bees. And that's not surprising when you start to understand the epistemology of the modern education system, because the big robber barons, the Rockefellers, and I'll do a whole episode on this one day, the Rockefellers, the Ford Foundation, the Carnegies, they all got together and they basically used their money using leverage to hijack the education system because they wanted the American worker to be ready for the industrialized world. They wanted the worker to work for them and not be competition. I want you to stay in here, Missy, but if you're going to do this, I can't have you. Lay down. And finally, conform intellectually and socially. And this is a big one because we hear a lot with, homeschooling versus public school. How will your child be socialized if they don't go to public school? Well, I also posted something pretty good for that today. And this one right here. You homeschool? How do you teach your kids to be social? Well, that's simple. I lock them up for 8 hours, make fun of their clothes, push them in the hallway, tease them for not conforming, and give them an iPad so they don't have to respond to or look at anyone in the eye when they go out. I mean, school is the exact wrong way to teach socialization, yet that's the cultural norm. You say, oh my God, well, if you don't do that, how will they be socialized? Hey, Lou, I'm going to put her in the other room because she is distracted. But yeah, she's adorable. Right? She's a Sheltie, a Scottish sheepdog. When we get a farm, which I plan on doing, you're going to be a happy girl. 5 months old. All right, you go out with Mom. Go to Mom. She's in the bedroom. Go to Mom. She's a good girl. She's just a puppy. She's learning and she cares nothing for my stream. She just wants to play. Where was I? Oh yeah, so I was talking about conforming and public school. And a lot of it, what it's designed to do is to get people to conform. Because what you see from a social standpoint, you see this all the time with the virtue signaling, right? People are afraid to say what they really think or don't even know what they really think. They just will, with great emotion, border collies. Are border collies Shelties? I think she's a mini collie, which is a Sheltie, but yeah, those are, she's a mini lassie, basically, and she's great. Very intelligent dog. She's been a joy. We got her from the store, and within 3 days, she had a severe pneumonia and had to go to the hospital for 5 days, but luckily she pulled through and she's doing great. So, on a side note. So people, they are so conditioned by school to conform socially that when they become adults, rather than form their own worldviews, they will respond to social pressure. And people are afraid to say what they really believe. I believe there was a trying to think who it was. I don't know. There was another controversy with one of the Hollywood people said something about Candace Owens today and the transgenders, and then completely walks back the comment because why? Because social pressure. Because people are going to scream that you're bad. Enough people scream that you're bad, then the advertising money pulls out. So people are very much conditioned by school, by public school, to not think for themselves. So that's just my little background on who John Taylor Gatto is. I strongly suggest you read his book. I'll write it right here. Dumbing Us Down by John Taylor Gatto. If you haven't read it, you're a parent. You owe it to yourself, to your children, to read his books and start to understand his philosophy, something that my educational philosophy is largely derived from, and hopefully I can make a lifetime, I don't even want to say a career, but a revolution in education, and I can honor his legacy. So, all right. Gatto identified, he did a study, this is in his books, and he identified 14 lessons taught at elite private schools that are not, by the way, this is my blog, www.classicallearner.com. If you haven't been there, please go over there, and it will prompt you to put your email in when you go to the webpage. Put your email in, and then when I post my blog work, you'll get an email alert so that you can read it. Obviously, I'm going to think highly of my work, but I think there's a lot of value in it if you actually read through it, a lot of ideas, and a lot of big-time educational philosophy, because the philosophy is the bricks that an education is built on. And the problem with the public school system is it's broken from the foundation, right? I appreciate that, Doc Ride. So the public school system is broken from the foundation. It's broken from the ground level. So they say, oh, we need to fix public school. What we really need to do is more funding. What we really need is to pay the teachers more. What we really need is a change of curriculum. You know, No Child Left Behind didn't work, but don't worry, we'll do the Common Core, and that's going to solve the problem. So, you know what? The problem is science. The problem is math. No, the problem is you are taking children and in an effort, allegedly, to prepare them for the real world, you are locking them in a place they don't want to be, in tiny rooms surrounded by cement walls, if they're lucky with one window, in 45-minute blocks. Every time the bell rings, they have to go to the next class, listen to the next teacher they don't want to listen to. All the work they do is completely out of context. They don't want to do it, and they're right to not want to do it because it's boring. And when they say, and every kid says this, when am I ever going to use this? Well, when you become an adult, you realize that that question was correct. This child has good observation skills. In fact, most children do. By the way, just a quick side note, but another meme I made this one. The other ones I borrowed from people, but this is school classrooms if attendance was based on child interest, right? That's what school classrooms would look like because, as we all know, children hate school. They don't want to be there. Children love to learn, but amazingly, by 5th grade, the majority of children hate school. So, without further ado, students form a unique theory on human nature. This is at elite private schools. This is the first lesson taught at the 14 premier private schools in the United States of America. When I say elite, I'm talking about the type of schools that the Kennedys' children go to, the type of schools that the Clintons go to. I'm talking elite, elite, elite. I'm talking, this is where the Rockefellers get educated, and this is what they learn. And you're going to see how different it is from No Child Left Behind and the Common Core, because at these elite private schools, the so-called elite people, or at least the people with power, people that have accumulated power, hey, Zoomers question everything is in the house. By the way, guys, check out his channel. I know he plugged it on Owen Benjamin's channel the other day, and I think we should build communities and support each other. So definitely check out Zoomer. And my brother, if you ever want to do a stream, something like that, I'd be interested in that. We could talk about the education system and the problems in the world, and how to make things better, because I think that we should bring it all together, and we should really be trying to, I mean, that's what I'm doing here. That's why I started Classical Learner. That's why I'm trying to help people better educate their children, because change happens at the grassroots level. Change happens at home. You know, we could kick and scream about the Federal Reserve and fiat currency and fractional reserve banking. Well, don't hold your breath waiting for that to change. But what you can change is the way you educate your child, so that your child isn't trained, indoctrinated to be a corporate worker bee, so that your child has an entrepreneurial mindset and the skill set to go along with it, so that they can prosper in the world. And then the beautiful thing about people that the beautiful thing about people that are sovereign and independent, that are able to start successful businesses, is they're not subject to that social pressure, right? They're not, I better not say what I'm thinking. I better not give my opinion on abortion, because if I do, I don't know, my corporation might fire me. No, you don't have to worry about that. And that's one of the big things that the so-called elite psychopaths, I mean, if they were so elite, why would they have to hide the proper way to educate people from the majority of the population? It sounds like they're just terrified. They don't sound very elite to me. Rig the game and you're still going to lose. It's a little bit of spirit of freedom in all of us, and we just got to channel it. So, all right. Students form a unique theory on human nature. What makes people tick? The theory is derived from history, philosophy, theology, literature, and law. So, a theme we come across throughout the 14 lessons, what they teach at these private schools, is children are expected to form unique theories in a variety of different areas, because all of the learning at these elite private schools and their ancestral bloodlines, but I mean, some people could call those bloodlines elite, but I mean, they're ancestral. And the royal family of England, ooh, look into that. But so children in these elite schools are challenged to formulate unique theories, and in this case, it's a unique theory on human nature itself. And the reason for that is, if you understand human nature, then you attended such a school. So we have this is a true elite then, because a person in a position of power who tries to help everyone else, that, to me, that is the definition of someone who's truly, because that's someone who is morally elite. And you want to talk about proper education of our children. Well, I mean, you send your children to school. We send our children to school so that they can be taught what? That a boy is not a boy, that a girl is not a girl, that third graders could be introduced to homosexuality. They shouldn't be introduced to any type of sexuality at all, because they're in third grade, and that's a talk for their parents to have. So your children are taught all of these lessons that are completely against your own standards of morality. And if that's not a reason enough to at least shield your child in some way from public school, I don't know what people are thinking. But students, they're challenged to form these unique theories of human nature, because if you understand human nature, you could control a crowd. It's something I myself have been trying to get better at, but I mean, 2 years ago I couldn't speak in front of a camera. Now I think I'm getting decent at controlling a crowd. Many of you watch Owen Benjamin. His father taught rhetoric and persuasion, right? He is an absolute master at controlling and holding a crowd, which is why he's able to speak for 3, sometimes 5 hours on camera. You have to be interesting, and you have to understand human nature to do that. And that's something that children are... That's the thing about education too, right? can't just tell someone this is human nature and, okay, now you know and you can do this. No. These children are being taught to see it, to look for it from a young age. I want you to look at human nature. I want you to think about human nature. What can history teach us about human nature? For those of you that have watched my videos, you know, I've talked a lot that they say history repeats itself. That is wrong. That's incorrect. So, all right, so here's a narrative, right? A narrative you'll get, which is based off of talking about foundational lies. Like, they'll talk about slavery and they'll say white people were responsible for slavery. Now, anyone that has any semblance of history knows that all people all over the world for all of human history, at least written human history, I mean, I don't know why our history only goes back 4 or 5,000 years. That's a little suspect. But for all of known history, all people of all races and skin colors, by the way, even white is it's a postmodern term. It's what is white? I mean, Europeans were at war with each other. Italian, Irish, English, Germans. People are at war with each other for hundreds, thousands of years. But oh no, they're just one group of people. It doesn't even make sense. It's just it's a way of controlling. Words are important. But I'm going to accept the premise here, right? So the premise that they put forward, just for the sake of argument, is that, well, white people were responsible for slavery, and therefore white people are hateful, white people are really bad, and white people are trying to suppress the rights of minorities in the modern world today. And people will say, oh, well, yeah, of course that's true because history repeats itself. Well, no, white skin doesn't repeat. That's not how history repeats itself. History repeats itself in terms of a theory, a person, or if you develop a theory on human nature, right? History doesn't repeat itself, but human psychology remains largely unchanged, and methods of accumulating power are studied and repeated. So the elites of today will look back throughout history and see how the wealthy and the powerful, I don't even like the term elites, by the way, but the wealthy and the powerful divided people to gain power during the time of slavery, and then they'll recycle some of those methods in order to gain power today. So history doesn't repeat itself, but human psychology remains unchanged. And so you start, okay, so what is human psychology, right? And you see how you start to form a theory on what makes people tick. Well, people naturally are social animals. So what you want to do if you want to control people is you divide them into groups. So you make everything binary. There's white people, they're bad. There's black people, they're oppressed. There's gay people, they're super oppressed, except the gay black people. They are clearly the most oppressed, except for the transgenders, who you wouldn't even believe how oppressed they are. There's a 50% suicide rate in the transgender community. And of course, the reason for that is because society is mean and hateful. It has nothing to do with, I don't know, a person having mental problems to the degree that they don't think they're in the right body. I mean, that might attribute to the suicide rate. Women are oppressed. Black women more than white women, and Spanish people are second-class citizens of the United States of America, even if they came here legally. And they break people into camps, and then people look for leaders. So what you do is you set up leaders in each camp, and that's why you see controlled opposition. You'll see people like people that are conservative in ideology, they'll be funneled to people like Ben Shapiro. And the reason they're funneled to people like Ben Shapiro is people naturally look to the leaders that everyone else looks to. So, and this is all human psychology. You can study this. And then they use that to move society in the direction they want to move society. So you see how when you start to understand these things that at these private schools where the children of the rich and powerful go, they're taught to formulate these theories on human nature. And with that, they do through history, with philosophy, which if you look at what I do with my plans that I make customized education plans for families. then involves projects and everything else. But one of the primary focuses, I focus on philosophy. And it is my philosophy when it comes to education that a child should be encouraged to engage in some type of philosophy every day of their life. And it shouldn't feel like work. It should just be the training of a proper mindset so that they're trained to identify the root of their belief, the root of their ideologies, and they can learn to think critically about the world. And they're taught this at these elite private schools. Next is theology. There's a book called Superclass, which, by the way, the book, don't get me wrong, don't take it as gospel. It's clearly elitist propaganda, but you can learn, if you know how to think critically, you can learn from elitist propaganda. And in the Superclass, it claims that there's 6,000 people who make up the power structure of the world, what some people would refer to as the worldwide deep state or the globalist deep state. And the religious leaders, like the Pope, who allows pedophilia to run wild throughout the Catholic Church. The number 3 at the Vatican was arrested, charged, part of a massive pedophile ring. Every bishop in the country of Chile was forced to resign. 300 priests in the state of Pennsylvania arrested for pedophilia-related charges just last year, which is one state, 300 priests. So these religious leaders are used by elites to control the public mind. Literature, a child should be well read. They should understand grammar, logic, and rhetoric, something we're going to talk about. And law. Children should have a root and understanding in the law, whether that be constitutional law or even how people respond to law. Because if you're talking about forming a theory on human nature, well, here's an example. If me and you were walking down the street and someone walked up to us and pulled a gun on us and said, "Give me your wallet," we would give them the wallet and everyone would agree, well, that's wrong, that's theft. But if you encode into law that the government, at the point of a gun, and that's what happens, because if you don't pay your taxes, you are put in a jail cell, right? And if you try to fight being put in a jail cell, you're shot and killed. So if the government at the point of a gun says we're going to open your wallet and give me your money, well, a very large percentage of the population will see, it won't even occur to them that something's wrong with that because they'll say, well, that's law. Well, this is how we form a theory on human nature. So the children at these elite private schools are tasked, and this is something you focus on for 15 years, forming a theory on human nature. And then with that, you start to understand other things, like there's different type of thinkers, right? There's logical thinkers and there's rhetorical thinkers. It took me a long time to start to understand rhetoric and persuasion. I'm a very logical thinker, as anyone who has followed me for a while probably can see. But when you start to understand people, if you want to move people, people are rhetorical. If you could put together a good rhyme, well, that's very powerful. Try to think back to like a political campaign just a few years ago where a candidate gained some traction that was unexpected. Remember Herman Cain? And he just came out 999. And all of a sudden you looked up one day before they made up some sexual harassment charges against him, and this guy came out of nowhere and he was at the top of the polls. Because 999 is just great rhetoric, right? What are you going to do with the taxes? We're going to lower the taxes. 999. 9% personal income tax, 9% federal tax, 9% sales tax. Logical based upon the half-truth system. I need to know more. Bloodlines of the Illuminati. The psyche is squeezed and molded to keep them in line. Yeah, I mean, you could win. Rhetoric is, hey Eric, how you doing? How you doing, brother? Thanks for tuning in. Rhetoric is very powerful. I know a lot of us watch. Oh, and that's what he's great at. He's great at rhetoric, right? I mean, everyone hit the Rogan's Up button, right? Which, by the way, if you haven't, please hit the Rogan's Up button. He does take on people on the internet logically. 999 is 666, right? Everything up is down, right? Everything is inverted. There's a very interesting guy, Quantum of Conscience. I just finished, at least him reading it out loud, the 63 chapters in his book. Very interesting guy. I don't necessarily, well, I don't think you should have to say, but a lot of people are binary thinkers. I don't agree with everything he says, but I think he has a great mind. You know, like, for example, you know, he believes that Kennedy wasn't actually killed. I don't believe that. Maybe he's right. Maybe I'm wrong, but I draw conclusions based on what I know. But he's a very interesting thinker, and he'll say some things that seem to be out there, and then he'll say some of the deepest things you have ever heard. So, yeah, that's very interesting on a side note, but not to get too off track. Number 2, strong experience with the act of literacies, reading, writing, and public speaking, also known as grammar, logic, and rhetoric, which is the classical trivium of education. So I covered this a little bit last night, but yeah, Tesla. You know, I just purchased Tesla's autobiography. I'm actually starting a new book tonight. I'm starting Persuasion, trying to understand persuasion and rhetoric, because that's important. And the next book I read after that is going to be Tesla's autobiography, because I want to understand the mind. I like great thinkers. That's why I like Owen Benjamin. I like Quantum of Conscience. I like Aristotle. I like Plato. I like great minds. You can learn so much from great minds. We have the unique opportunity, more than any time in history, to interact in one way or another with some of the greatest minds living today and the greatest minds in human history. And when you want to talk about education, yeah, I haven't read Ford yet, but I definitely want to read. I definitely want to read all of his books, and he definitely has written them on some interesting topics. So I look forward to getting into the mind of Henry Ford. So anyway, so strong experience in literacies. So grammar, logic, and rhetoric, also known as reading, writing, and public speaking. But basically grammar. If me and you were in a debate, the first thing that I would do is force you to define your term, right? So Doc Ride said 999 is 666. Well, you know, if we were having a debate, I would need him to define, is 999 666 or is 666 999? Or are they both the same exact thing? I need you to define that before we start having a debate. Otherwise, he would be able to kind of bend his arguments, right? I'd say, wait a second, in one sentence you said it was 666, and in another sentence you said it was 999. So you have to force your opponent to define their term at the beginning, at the onset of a debate. And this is what they teach, if you were at the Princeton debate team. This is what they teach at the, elite debate clubs and stuff like that. You have to define your terms if you're going to write a paper. When you're reading, this is very important, because otherwise the author could change the meaning of their words throughout their writing, and if you don't pick up on it, you might get fooled by an argument filled with fallacies. So there's grammar, and then of course, just commas and periods and colons and semicolons, different ways of structuring sentences and all that type of thing. So there is grammar, then there's logic, which is the process, right? They're at a very young age. All right, so think about that. When they focus on logic and philosophy, debates don't allow hate speech. It's so ridiculous, right? Talk about the Latin roots of words, right? Spelling, to cast a spell, right? If you criticize a Jewish person, they say you're anti-Semitic. and they frame it as if you criticized all Jewish people, which is ridiculous. If you criticize a black person, they say you're racist, and they act like you criticized all black people, which is ridiculous. But again, it gets back to most of the public is unable to define terms. So if the public define terms, when you criticize the Sackler family and you say, there's this Jewish family who is in control of, I believe they're in control of all the opioids in the United States of America, and there's this opioid epidemic, and so there's this Jewish family that say, oh, well, that's anti-Semitic because you're criticizing a Jewish family. Okay, well, if that's the case, I need you to define anti-Semitic. So this is what you would say in a debate. Okay, you just called me anti-Semitic. That's fine. I could accept that premise. But you have to define for me what anti-Semitic means. They said, well, you criticized Jewish people. No, I didn't. I criticized a Jewish person. What is your definition of anti-Semitic? Well, you criticized the Sackler family, and they're Jewish. Yeah, right. I criticized a Jewish person. Is your definition of anti-Semitic to criticize any individual Jewish person? Well, no. Anti-Semitic is if you criticize any Jewish person, that means you've criticized all Jewish people. So, based on your definition of anti-Semitism, you're saying that a Jewish person is completely, just because they're Jewish, no matter what they do, are completely above any criticism. So, you see the power in getting people to define their terms. And this is the spells they cast on the public. And they do this with everything. If you criticize a white person, that's fine. I criticize white people all the time. I won't tell you that all white people are bad. When I criticize the Sackler family, I'm not saying that all Jewish people are bad. I have family that is Jewish. Technically I'm probably one something Jewish myself by the way they do it, because they do it as a bloodline. If you criticize a black person, you've criticized all black people. So, and this is why the elites are taught to define your terms, right? Because they understand this, but the general public does not. So they're taught grammar, then logic, right? It's just the process, the how to think over the what to think. Remove contradictions from the way that we think. And then rhetoric, which is knowledge doesn't become wisdom until it's passed on from one person to another. So rhetoric is, you can do it logically, but rhetoric is the art of getting people to understand, and not only understand, but accept your message. And while doing that logically is a good way, doing that rhetorically might be more effective. And here's an example I'm going to give, and it might trigger some people, but I don't accept binary thinkers to be around me. I want to challenge you. If you follow me, if you buy into what I'm doing, I want to challenge the way you think. So one of the greatest rhetorical thinkers I've come across is obviously Trump. And I don't like to be political because I've got involved in that, and I took a step away, and I was like, the politics is bullshit. It's all a show. But just in terms of people's skill sets, right? So Donald Trump, yeah, you can say what we need to do is secure the southern border. What we need to do is we're going to have to ramp up security, and we're going to protect the southern border. We have this big problem with illegal immigration and drugs coming into the country. No. We're going to build a wall, and Mexico is going to pay for it. That's powerful rhetoric. Because in people's mind, a wall is nice, and it will definitely help authorities, but you could also protect the border without a wall if you wanted to. But what a wall does is it creates a picture, and everyone that wants the southern border secured, now they can picture in their mind a wall. That is powerful rhetoric, and they're taught this at these elite private schools. And then we're going to build a wall, and Mexico's going to pay. It just sounds good. It's like, I want to get behind this. Lock her up. Lock her up. Well, anyone who still thinks that he had any intentions of locking her up, I got a bridge to sell you in Brooklyn. Because, I chanted it too, but obviously he didn't plan on locking her up. It works both ways. So another great rhetorical thinker, and I know you'll say, wait a second, she can't be a great thinker, is whatever the hell her name is, Alexandria blah, 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 Cortez. Now, you don't like her because her rhetoric goes against what you believe in, but she's effective in getting her message across. Why? Because the people that she's trying to reach already have similar worldviews to her. So when you say, so what's the goal of a debate? To convince or to argue your view? It depends on the debate you're in, right? But at elite schools, they teach children these skills. At elite schools, they teach children these skills. So Cortez comes out and says, no, none of these senior Congress people are doing their job. And we all know that the world's going to end in 12 years. You don't think that's powerful rhetoric? Well, a lot of these people have came through the public school system, and their teachers have been telling them their whole lives that there's a real problem here. The world's in trouble. So she says the world's going to end in 12 years, which if you don't think that's the message they're pushing, she said this in 2018, well, look up Agenda 2030, right? That's 12 years away. This is what people are taught in school. So she uses that rhetoric, and people see Armageddon in their mind. Very powerful rhetoric. And especially in the public sphere, when it comes to winning the minds of people, right? When it comes to winning the minds of people, rhetoric is much more effective than logic. Now, a good person, like what I believe Owen Benjamin does, yes, he uses rhetoric, but he uses it to get people to accept his logical arguments, and then as he uses the rhetoric, he makes the logical argument. So there's a moral way to do it, or there's just, I'm going to use the rhetoric and I'm going to win the people. But this is what's taught at these elite private schools, and this is what we as parents should adopt, and this is what officially I call it with my consulting, because I'm afraid of the lawyers from the Department of Education coming after me. So with my consulting that I do with families, this is what I suggest in the plans that I suggest they implement. This is what I suggest they focus on in terms of long-term education. Insight into major institutional forms, courts, corporations, military, and education. You want your child to have an understanding of how these big institutions operate. So a great assignment would be to have your 12, your 13-year-old, have them do research into the parent corporations of major media companies. And you could have them do original research, so they're thinking critically. And what they'll find is that, I think it's 5 corporations now, it was 6. 5 corporations control 90% of the media. And they'll start to understand, okay, well, it looks like I have this big diversity of information coming at me, but in reality, I have what appears to be information coming from a lot of different places, but it's really just a very small amount of people controlling all of the information I have access to. Maybe I better be careful in how seriously I take what they're saying to me, or how willing I am to just believe what they're saying to me. So you want them to do that. Repeated exercise in good manners. So a great skill to teach a young person is how to golf. You want them to know how to golf because a lot of people do business on a golf course. A great analogy for that would be interviews, right? People, they're taught to go on interviews, and what you need to do is you need to have your resume, and it needs to be, all right, this is actually a great example of good manners, right? What are the appropriate manners? People are told by school, you're going to go on an interview, and you need to have your resume right, and you need to have all your answers. You really need to know what you're talking about, and you need to be very clear and concise. Bullshit. No, you don't. No, you don't. If you want to get hired, what you need to do is make the person sitting across from you think, I'd like to work with this person. So if you're going to go on an interview, don't be like everyone else. Be rhetorical. Be funny. Crack jokes. And get the person across from you to like you. And then you're much more likely to get the position. Especially when you work at a company and it comes time for a raise. I mean, when they're not giving the person they have to give a raise because it's mandated by law, if you're the person that's liked, maybe the person that's a little bit out there, willing to take a chance, well, those are the manners to know in that situation. So not exactly the manners you might think. Doc Ride, you're the man. You're putting my boy through college, although I'll probably tell him not to go to college. I'm hoping if I could get it right with him, he should be operating a pretty successful business by the time he's 15 years old, and by the time he's 20, he won't have to listen to his crazy old man anymore. I'm very interested because I had to learn the world when I got older, but my children will learn the world. I'll teach them how the world operates from a very young age without the indoctrination of public school, and I can only imagine the things they're going to teach me, the things that they'll see that I just can't see, and they'll say, "Dad, look at this," and I'll go, "How did I never see that?" And my boy's smart, guys, and he's smart. He's smart. I love him. He's almost 18 months old, and he's already, for the most part, he's hit and miss, but he's already using the potty. And for those of you that have had children, it's pretty damn impressive. My boy. All right. Okay. Yes, and we are, not only will I tell him to travel, but I'm going to make sure as much as I can, I travel with him, which is why I'm building a business that's internet-based, because I can do it from anywhere. So once I get it right, I can show him the world. So, all right, what's good manners? Independent work. So yeah, at these elite private schools, independent work is about 80% of what they do. So you want your child to drive the work themselves. Because you want to follow their interest. You want them to think critically. You don't want to tell them information to have them repeat, but you want to have them reading, doing things in the real world, feedback-based learning, building with their hands, building wood racks, building sheds, doing engineering, computer coding. You want to have them, create, work, and do for themselves. So I think I'm going to cut it at 5 tonight. I think I'll come back maybe tomorrow night or maybe a night after that, and I'll go over the remaining 14 lessons for Gato, because I've already been going for about an hour, and there were some things I wanted to do, including spend time with my beautiful wife. So I think I'm going to cut it a little short tonight. I'll do the 6 through 14 maybe tomorrow night or maybe later on. So if you guys have any questions, ask them now, and then I'll call it a night. So just let me know, and I'll read some of what you guys said. Ask a question to help them find the answers. Yeah, so a lot of what we do should be the Socratic method, which is just guided questioning so that they could find the answers from within, and they could understand the root as to why they believe what they believe. So, like we used taxation as an example. They might not believe, my son might not have the same opinion as I do on taxation, but what I do want to do is, Doc Ride, thank you again. I can't thank you enough. It's, you do stuff like this, and it's the little support that it makes a big difference for people, just even with psychology. And if you guys haven't, smash the Rogan's Up button, of course. But yeah, you want to have guided questioning and challenge your child to get to the roots of why they believe what they believe, and also to root out any logical contradictions in the way that they think. And if you can do that, um, you are teaching them how to think, and um, you're giving them the tools they need to start to understand a very complicated world. So let's go up and see some of the things that you said. Oh, did they spend at least a month on the gender pay gap in school? Is that true? I bet they don't show the Harvard studies, which show that there is no such thing as a gender pay gap. That um, if you factor in amount of time worked, amount of years on the job, time taken off, um, college education, the level you have in the company, that there actually is no gender pay gap. But they probably don't want, you know, people to know that. Zoomer questions everything. Just put a video up to thank the Bears. He's working on his next big video. He would love to do a stream. Oh, great, Zoomer. So yeah, we'll set that up sometime. Just get it on the schedule. And you're probably like me, you got to schedule everything. So I'll give you some dates that I'm available, and we'll schedule it. Should be fun. Liberty Snake Bear, my main man. Really appreciate you tuning in. The stream last night is the most important video you can share with all parents today. Can't tell you how much that means to me. Obviously, I put a lot of work into all of this. Doing good, brother. Keep up the good work you are doing. Thank you so much, and I hope you're doing well. Let's see. Then he disappeared. Did the Prime Minister of Australia disappear? I'm up on the news, but if that happened, I missed it. That's terrifying, but expected. All right, let's see. Medicine Woman Bear. I would like to become a homeschool teacher. How do I get involved? It's funny. I was actually talking to my wife about seeing if other homeschoolers wanted to become, I guess, teachers or consultants to do what I do. So yeah, the thing is, I need people that have teaching or significant homeschool teaching experience. But if you have that, inbox me on Classical Learner Today on Instagram, and maybe we could actually work to set that up, because I would be interested in. What I want to do eventually is have. So you always have to think big, right? This is how I want to teach my son, and this is what I promote to teach children. So, yeah, right now I have my small business in which I'm working one-on-one with families, and I'm making these plans for them. But what I'd like to do over time is partner with a bunch of experienced homeschoolers all over the country. I could do some coaching, teach them the philosophy behind my plans, and they could actually teach the plans themselves, and of course they would make money for doing so. So I would get a cut, they would get a cut, and this is how you scale your business and start to grow, and this is how you scale your ideas and start to grow them, because right now I'm the person pushing my ideas. If Medicine Woman Bear gets involved, well, you would also then be pushing the philosophy that I've come up with, that's largely derived from John Taylor Gatto, the person who I'm presenting the 14 lessons taught in elite private schools that he figured out. So yeah, Medicine Woman Bear, definitely inbox me, Classical Learner Today on Instagram. You could also email me, classicallearnertoday@gmail.com. That's classicallearnertoday@gmail.com. So let's see, Classical Learner Today Instagram, and email classicallearnertoday@gmail.com. So very cool. I would definitely be interested in that. So, guys, this has been a lot of fun. Again, if you could please hit the like button. Please share this video, last night's video, any video that you find interesting on your social media, because um, the best type of marketing is the marketing that, hey, I came across this guy and he's pushing a really good message. He's doing some really cool things in the field of education and parenting, and you should check him out, because it's one thing if like I put an ad out, or I put out a meme and it goes a little viral or something like that. But it's another thing when someone says, "Hey, I've been following this guy and he's doing a really good job." That's very powerful marketing. So, guys, I really appreciate you tuning in tonight, and this has been a lot of fun. Doc Ride, brother, thank you for sending me those donations. That means a great deal to me. And like I said, go to www.classicallearner.com, join my email list so you can be up to date on the latest blog post that I put out. I'm trying to do about one a week, although I got a lot going on and stuff, but when I can, I do. How do I pronounce? Can you phonetically do that for me, Shelly? How do I pronounce that phonetically? Shelly R. Because I want to pronounce it right, but when I see you write, I don't know exactly how to pronounce it. I'm like, oh well, if I try to say it, I'm gonna sound like an idiot, and then I just don't say anything at all. But Owen was talking about that. I think it was today or the other day. In Michelle. Okay, so Shell. Okay, so Shelly. Okay, Michelle, Shelly. Michelle, Shelly R. All right, try to remember that. He was talking about today is that when you read, you don't realize that you don't say a lot of words you read out loud, and you start speaking. You start speaking publicly, and as you're talking, you realize how many words you don't quite pronounce right. Like when I first started doing this 2 years ago, I couldn't say anonymous. So I kept trying to say anonymous, and I sounded a little special, and it wasn't because I'm special. I think maybe, but it was just because I couldn't pronounce it. So you start to speak publicly over a period of time, and you start to focus more on the pronunciation of words, and you start to get better at pronunciation, which is why in what I preach, what I teach, almost every lesson, but definitely every week, I think every day of a child's life, they should present publicly, speak publicly in one format or another. This way, they think about pronunciation, they think about ways of formulating arguments, and they think about the different strategies they can use to keep people's attention and to articulate their message. So, guys, thank you for tuning in today. It's a privilege to be able to do this, and I'm going to go spend some time with my family, my wife, and take care of a couple of things before I go to bed and wake up tomorrow and do it again. This is Classical Learner. I'm Brett Pike. I'm the Parent Guide. Have a good night, guys.